Hey, it's the Nerdy Sports Fan. So, we're continuing our series breaking down the schedules of every team, doing win-loss record predictions. In case you haven't seen any of the other videos, brief thing about how it works. I will put a good number of games in the guaranteed win category based off of where I think you're falling in the schedule, what the other teams' prospects are, what your prospects are. Some games will also be in the guaranteed loss category for the same reasons. The remainder are going to go into a toss-up category because parity exists in this league and the innumerable wonderment that is the any given Sunday rule. Now, at the end of the breakdown of the entire schedule, we'll just divide up all the toss-up games relatively evenly based off of strength of schedule, and that's how we get our record prediction. So, let's get into it for these Tennessee Titans. All right. The offseason's been, in my mind, kind of a meh. They drafted okay. The losses in free agency and the gains in free agency are kind of a push. It's not. I don't expect them to be light years ahead of where they were last season. In my mind, the biggest variable here is you're starting the season with Ryan Tannehill as your starter. That didn't happen last year. Last year was Mariota in the beginning. So that's still a big leap forward. Okay, that's what? 4 or so games that you have a better chance at winning at the beginning of the season than you did last year. So that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So week 1, at Denver, that's a win. You couldn't have said that last year. Okay? This year, now you got a veteran quarterback that knows his receiving group well. You have Henry with, him going up against a defense that was pretty weak against the run. And yes, every team did what they could to address their weaknesses. And Denver's no different. They did what they could to address the weakness in their run defense by getting Casey. So, we'll see how big of a difference that makes in their run D. Personally, with how bad their run defense was, I think they also need some help at middle linebacker that they just didn't get. And, maybe an in-the-box safety, which they also don't have. So, Henry's going to have himself a field day, and Tannehill's going to be able to manage that attack way better than Drew Lock will on the other side, considering this is going to be Drew Lock's first opening game. Too much pressure for the rookie. So, pretty easy win for Tennessee out of the box. Now, week 2, Jaguars. Well, isn't that a nice start to the season? Just gets served up like that. I mean, the Jaguars are trash. They're garbage this year. They really are. They have so many good players that have left. All right, this is a team that was deep in the playoffs just a few years ago. And there's no reason they should be this bad. It comes down to culture, because everybody who was a major contributor on that defense, especially, is gone. Nowhere. They're out of there. So their defense is going to be easy pickings. This year is the definition of a throwaway year for the Jaguars, and you're going to be able to take advantage of that twice. So, nice gimme win against the Jags. At the Vikings. Now this is where you get into the more competitive games. This, I feel, is a toss-up because both teams are similarly built. They're focusing on the run and now the Vikings are moving towards pushing the quarterback to manage the game more based off of the Shanahan run-centric West Coast offense. So, similarly built, want to focus on the run and playing tough defense, coaches up very good defensive play. I think Tennessee's got a bit of a leg up roster development-wise. I do. The Vikings lost so many defenders. But the Vikings have a better quarterback, and as much as I like what Tannehill's done for the Tennessee Titans, he's been very good because of what Tennessee does in the run game. Cousins, I mean, he was on absolutely god-awful teams throwing for 4,000 plus yards multiple years in a row. So yes, he's a better quarterback than Tannehill. And they also have home field. But the roster depth advantage goes to Tennessee, and that's why it's a bit of a push. There's strengths on both sides with similarly built teams. All right. So, Steelers. You're getting them at home, and that's a win. Mostly based off of where they're at in their year. So, were you getting them later in the year, this would be a much more competitive game. But at the beginning of the season, the Steelers are going to be a team that has some rust, specifically with Ben Roethlisberger. So they showed themselves as a team that was a great defense, but the offense doesn't work at all unless you have Big Ben. The offseason's not lending itself towards him knocking off the rust. All right, it is a truncated offseason. It's going to be much more difficult for Big Ben to get into the groove. So, 4 weeks into the season, I think he's still finding that groove. This is really the range where he should start to figure it out, but being on the cusp of that versus full stride is why Tennessee is going to have a much easier go of this as a home game. So that's a W for you. All right. Bills, toss-up game. Okay? So they beat you last year, early in the season, in your home stadium. You had Mariota. You had Mariota starting. Okay? This was before the transition to Tannehill. So the Bills are better than they were last year. So's Tennessee. All right? And at the most important position, quarterback. So there's a lot of reasons to say this could be a win for both sides, which is why it's a toss-up. Okay, Texans, another toss-up game. This is a little bit more specific. You have a division rival. You know each other really well. And they have Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is a transcendent talent. Okay, he can move and make defenders miss, and he's got one of, if not the best, deep threats in the game in Will Fuller. And at this point in the season, I expect Fuller to be healthy. I get it. The guy's bones are made out of glass or something. You really worry about injury with the Texans. But, again, early in the season, and as long as Deshaun Watson's healthy, that team always has a real chance to win, especially against teams that they know very well, like their division rivals. I get it. They've traded away a lot of assets, making it so their roster is weaker than it was, in my mind, than a few years ago. But Deshaun Watson, man, that guy spackles over a lot of holes. He really does. All right. So you get the bye week in week 7. Could have been better, could have been worse. It's towards the middle of the season. This is on the lame side, though. I mean, especially when you're a real playoff contender like Tennessee is this year, you want to have that bye week as late as possible. All right, so at the Bengals, out of the bye, that's an obvious win. That's obvious win. I mean, the Bengals, you earn the number 1 overall draft pick, okay? And Joe Burrow by himself and some crap-ass linebacker from Wyoming out of the draft and getting DJ Reader in free agency, those are, moves that are definitely going to improve this Bengals squad, because any linebacker added to that group of homeless people is going to be an upgrade. DJ Reader is a stud. And be glad you don't got to play him twice a year anymore. And Burrow was very obviously the best quarterback in the draft. But those kinds of additions to a team that was the worst team in the league doesn't even get them to average. Nowhere near, actually. They're still going to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 draft pick this year. So the Bengals are at least a year away. Titans are win now mode. All right. So week 9, you get the Bears. It's at home. This is a toss-up game for me. Not so much because of where the Titans are, more so because of where the Bears are. The Bears at this point in the season are going to be in desperation mode. Trubisky is going to be a tire fire at the beginning, and He's going to be playing for his job. Matt Nagy's going to be coaching for his job. And those factors are going to make them desperate. Desperate teams are dangerous. They really are. The Bears have talent on offense and on defense. It's been game time decisions from the coach and bad throws from the quarterback that have really held them back. Well, those two guys getting the fire lit under their ass of, hey, get it figured the fuck out or you're gone, is going to make them dangerous. So I don't see that as a gimme win at this point in the season. Where you could get it earlier on or even later on in the season, I would think that would be a better chance of just thumping them. But at this point, toss-up game due to desperation. Okay, Colts. I'm putting this in the toss-up category for this team. I do think the Colts are an easy mark for a lot of teams. I don't think so for the Titans. Specifically because the Colts are going to be able to focus on their running attack. And that was the real weakness of the Titans last year, their running defense. Do they have enough from this offseason to fix that? I don't think so. I just don't. So I do think it's still going to be a problem this year. And, the loss of players like Logan Ryan doesn't necessarily help much either. But Phillip Rivers is nowhere near the quarterback he was. So you don't really have to worry about the back end of your defense. It's just that run defense that I'm really still worried about. And can you stop the best offensive line in football from making openings for Marlon Mack, who was a serviceable running back last year, very, very good actually, and a top draft pick who's running 4.3 speed, in my mind, the best running back in the draft this year, a kid out of Wisconsin. I don't know. But there's enough real serious question marks on the Colts side to give you serious, thoughts that you can definitely win this game pretty easily too. So it's a toss-up game for me because both teams have strengths on offense where the other side is weak on defense. So now we're getting into week 11 with the Ravens. You're on the road. I get it. I am absolutely not going to say the Ravens are going to thump you. This is a toss-up game because you absolutely trashed the Ravens in the playoffs last year. I mean, it was silly. Nobody in the league saw that coming. I just think that it was a perfect storm scenario. The Ravens are built very, very specifically. They are built to decimate teams that are pass heavy and defend the pass heavy. That's not what the Titans are. The Titans are old school smash mouth. And the Ravens are more college offense, gimmicky run game, the kinds of plays that everybody for years said you could not work in the NFL because of how teams were built then, which is how the Titans are built now. So this old school smash mouth style that Vrabel has been, really driving home for this Titans team is just perfect to decimate the Ravens. But again, Lamar Jackson's a special talent. He is the best running quarterback I've ever seen. He is tied with Michael Vick for that level in my mind. But he can also throw. He's like, Randall Cunningham, who runs the ball even better. That's probably my best comparison for Lamar Jackson right now. And I'm never going to say the Ravens are absolutely out of it because of that. There's a factor there in his game that nobody can really account for with any sort of consistency. It's the reason he was the MVP last year. So even though you trounced those guys in the playoffs, they have a serious chance to beat you still, based off of their level of talent and what they did in the offseason, which was specifically to stop this running game that just bullied them. So I'm not going to say that their moves are instantly effective and definitely going to work until I see it. I'm not going to say you can just thrash this Ravens team until I see it. This is a toss-up for me, and this is game of the year potential. It's going to be one of, if not my absolute favorite games to watch all season going into it. I've got this circled on my calendar. All right, so now we move on to Week 12 at the Colts, another toss-up game for the same reasons that I said before. Okay, they are built to attack your weaknesses. You're built to attack a weakness of theirs, but you just generally overall a better, more cohesive team. But they are just specifically set up to attack your biggest weakness. And now you're on the road. But again, the Rivers being on the back end of his career and really kind of bad now is making this so I can't necessarily put my finger on it. So I won't. Okay? Toss-up game. A lot of division games are like that, though. So this is kind of normal. All right. So, Browns. You're definitely going to beat the Browns, especially at home. So, the Browns' biggest issue is not their talent. It's their leadership. They don't have it. All right? Last year, Freddie Kitchens, a rookie head coach, was trying to rein in a locker room full of divas. Just me first, very talented players on offense, and that squad quarterbacked by Baker Mayfield, a relatively young, extremely brazen quarterback. I mean, the guy hasn't proven enough in this league to really rein in players like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham with any sort of consistency. I don't think that changes. Okay, it's the exact same formula as last year. You have yet another rookie head coach trying to rein in that locker room. And I don't see Baker Mayfield getting any different with his leadership style. I don't. I think he's going to need to get to the point where he proves it on the field and people finally buy into his kind of leadership. That's the kind of leadership that takes a few years to develop. He hasn't had enough time in the league to get there. So, because of the chaotic mess that is the Browns right now, they're coming to your house, and you're most certainly not a chaotic mess. It's a very established locker room and culture, thanks to Vrabel's steady hand and majestic mustache. So, yeah, I think you're going to beat the Browns easily. All right, so now we're moving into Week 14 at the Jaguars. What do you know? Another W. The Jaguars have had a fire sale on the defensive side of the ball. That doesn't change from Week 2. In fact, it's probably worse at this point in the season because who the hell wants to continue putting forth their best effort for a team that by this point may have lost 10 games already? So, yeah, they're going to be demoralized. So it's going to be an easy win. The only reason this might give you any sort of trouble is you have a slightly tougher matchup the next week with the Lions, but I don't think the Lions are so scary that turns the Jaguars into a trap game. I really don't. And speaking of, the Lions is definitely going to be a win. Matt Patricia is in a year that's he's coaching for his career, and I don't think he's going to coach well enough. I've been saying for a very long time that Matt Patricia is just not the guy to be the head coach. He's trying to lay out what Belichick did in New England, and he's doing worse at it than Bill O'Brien in Houston is doing, and we all think that Bill O'Brien's insane for what the hell he's doing. So, yeah, I think the Lions got a lot of talent. I really do. I think Matt Stafford has been severely staffed, not underrated. Like, everybody says he's great. He just has no help. And that has continued for way too long. But either way, Patricia's leadership is not going to put the Lions in a good enough position to even come close to competing with these Tennessee Titans. All right, now week 16, you get the Packers, more of a toss-up game. The Packers are going to be, at this point in the season, pretty desperate for wins. They are on the cusp of playoffs themselves at this point in the season. With their strength of schedule and the fact that they were actually pretty weak compared to their actual record last year, I see them dropping considerably. And the offseason that they had really didn't help Rodgers much. So you have a roster that's transitioning to the style of play that San Francisco used to get really deep into the playoffs last year, with a quarterback that really wants to play much more up-tempo and passing the ball. So it doesn't really jive. It's going to take Ben Roethlisberger to check his ego and just fall in line with the style of play. And I'm not really sure he's, at this point in his career, ready to do that. So there's a lot of weird factors with the Packers, but they have enough in their favor, especially the simple fact that they have Aaron Rodgers, for me to never really count them out of a game. There's a handful that I think they're definitely going to lose, but this really isn't one of them. I think they're going to be competitive with the Titans. All right, so you wrap up the season at the Texans. I think this is a loss, mostly because road games against division rivals are always going to be difficult. And if you've been paying attention, the way this system works out, I have the locks for definite wins and definite losses. The Titans at 7-1. You split the difference on the remaining games with adjustments for strength of schedule. My likely record prediction for the Titans is 11-5. And that's enough for sewing up the division. You will be the division winner. But it's nowhere near a strong enough record to be in the top two spots. That's almost a lock for Kansas City and Baltimore at this point. So you won't need to put your starters out there. So not starting Henry, not starting Tannehill, letting these guys rest up for their home playoff game is going to be why you lose to the Texans. And I'm sure that's really good news for you guys. I mean, I would take a loss in that situation for sure. You're going to be able to see Mike Vrabel's dead ferret on his upper lip in the playoffs one more time. Hopefully he doesn't shave it like an idiot this year. I mean, that's where the whole team draws its power from. So obviously you want to keep that sucker on there. Either way, let me know what you guys think. Okay? Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Heck, we can have an entire special on the majesty that is Mike Vrabel's mustache, which I think I just gave myself a fantastic idea for a video next month while I'm still starved for football content. And hit up my other channel. So I separated all the video game content to a nerd sports fan. I know, creative, right? Channel. And if you were into that stuff that I was posting, it's going to be there now because most of the NFL fans weren't. So we're separating that. Hit me up on Instagram for either of those channels as well. And hit me up on Patreon. So this coming season for fantasy football content, I am going to be laying out what the big draft board should be, doing weekly sit starts, and doing watch-alongs. So I'm here for you guys. Thanks for watching.